I guess with the removal of families, really tough one in communities. In any situation, whether you're Aboriginal or not, it's a really hard thing to deal with. And as I said, having kids myself, I feel what parents are going through. And I guess a lot of things that we look at, because we do work in that caseload midwifery, and because we do have all those people that are helping out, and I think it's really important to use, I guess, their expertise as well. So it's a matter of that collaborative approach. And also I think it's important that I know my role is talking to the families and basically working out how it got to that kind of position in the first place, and how do we try and not let it get to that position because of the team we've got and how we do work closely. That's one of the things we try really hard with. But then if it does happen to that, then we try and work hard with working out why and getting to the bottom of it, and helping the parents and the families understand and things like that.
We had a young girl lose her 3 children last year. Yeah, which it's really hard. It's really hard to deal with, on a daily basis. But things that we put programs in place for her because docs required, or community services required all this. They put down that she had to do parenting classes, and so we organised cooking classes for her and all these other things where we could help her to try and get her children back. But we still kept in contact with her as much as we possibly can, and that's really what Trudy does a lot of that work. That's like in the midwives, that's sort of out of our scope. So Trudy does most of the work in that area. But yeah, it's really difficult. It's really difficult. And there's not one clear answer to it. It's different, every situation is different, and it's hard. Yeah.
Being in a situation where a child is removed is one that, from my own experience of being on maternity wards when that has happened, is one of, there's a lot of stress for the staff. Staff often don't know how to react to this. They've often been the ones that have made the notifications, so that there's a sense of concern that the parent may find out that they're the ones who have made these allegations about them. So there's a sense of fear of how the parent might react to them. There can be a sense of guilt that, that I've brought this upon this person, even though, professionally I've had to, ethically I've had to, morally I've had to, but still feeling, could there have been another way? And so often for staff, it's what do we do? And I suppose one way of handling it is to avoid it and let the social workers deal with it. But often the parent has had the relationship with the nurses because they're there 24 hours a day. I think what we do know is when grief of a patient is handled well, then for nursing staff particularly, they have a sense of that they've achieved something. If we look in palliative care, sort of a good death is a good death for staff too. If if there's been, if they've been able to provide the care that they wanted to provide, that they could actually be present to extended family, if they could do those things which showed compassion to the person that was dying, that then the staff member can have a sense of, yeah, that was worthwhile, I did my job. And I think the same thing with these parents. Often, instead of treating it as this is an occupational health and safety issue and let's just get security up and we'll all just avoid it, it's about being able to understand, being able to deal with your own feelings in this. So I think for staff, when a child is removed by child protection, particularly after birth, that, staff need to talk about, how they feel about that. Also, I think for the parents, to be able to acknowledge acknowledge their grief. My experience is that what parents find hardest is where people are not understanding that they're hurting. And so for someone just to acknowledge and to be empathetic that this is really tough and that this is really painful is all the parent needs to hear. And what we see particularly in this group of parents is there's the unresolved grief and the ongoing grief that sits with these women and has an effect on their mental health. So it's those things that sort of we need to acknowledge in this group. But particularly, I think the issue around the grief that they experience, that when their child is removed, that they hurt just as much as a parent whose child has died in utero or has been born stillborn or has died afterwards. And for these parents, they need to have their grief issues looked at in that context just as sensitively as we would with other parents. I think, for staff to be able to, to do what they would do with another parent who's had a loss, to be able to do things like be part of offering perhaps to, get the hospital camera and take some photos of them and their baby before the child is removed. Some nice things like when Child Protection is coming to remove the baby from the hospital, to have it planned, so that it doesn't become a situation where it has to be an occupational health issue around safety and we have to have security guards around, but to do things like have the time, discharge the mother before the baby's discharged, allow the parents and their extended family to be able to say goodbye. To allow the mother to be able to dress the baby in what she wants the baby to be dressed in to leave hospital, to offer things such as the nightie that the baby has been in, so that the mother can take that with her from the hospital, to do things like make sure that the cards, from the top of the crib are given to the parent. Make sure that they do have photos. Remember, many of these parents they're very poor, they don't have resources, so things like to get photos taken and to have those photos taken. So they're just some of those things that can, for staff, can be a way of not denying what's happening, but entering into what's happening, and to do that in an empathetic way. What we're asking of nurses and midwives when a child is being removed is all of those things that they know how to do with, say, a parent that they've been taught how to do with a parent who loses a child. This is a loss. It's a different kind of loss, but it is a loss. So it's all of those things that they've learnt about respecting the loss, about acknowledging the loss, about ritualising the loss, which are very important. And I think that at the heart of being midwives and nurses, we're good at doing that. So it's really about, rather than avoiding that that confrontation, is to actually enter into that relationship, to enter into that grief as we would with any other mother, and to do all of those rituals that are really important.